Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview Kentucky's trip to Alabama. That's going to be noon Central on Saturday. The line's not out as we do this, but Ken Pomeroy's got it as Alabama about a 6-point favorite. Bart Torvik has got Alabama favored by 8.7, and BPI's got Alabama favored by 6.1. All three have Alabama with a 70% plus shot to win this one. Average those three lines, we're looking at somewhere around 7 in Alabama's favor. Kentucky comes off a win against LSU at home. That one went to the final seconds. I think both of us have some trust issues with Kentucky at this moment. And Alabama has won 3 in a row since that loss to Gonzaga in Birmingham.
Yep. An interesting setup here based on where the two teams are at. And, for me, this is, look, we talked about with Kentucky, right? This was the kind of matchup to me where you play a team like Alabama, who offensively can do a lot of things really well. And a lot of that is helped by their defense at times because they're just so much better defensively now. And I think that's been a big part of their turnaround, as we've talked about all season. And now you come into this game, Kentucky feeling much better, I think, about itself after just winning the LSU game. Was it perfect? No, we talked about it. But your confidence is a little bit higher now that you've gotten a win, right, against a pretty good team here. Like I said, Michigan one, you can look at those different things and use that. But the fact is, they've done some things pretty well in these past 2 games. Now, the Louisville game, we know where Louisville's at. We don't have to go into that. But getting a win against LSU, good step forward. But now it's like we've said all season, Kentucky's most head-scratching performances have come away from Rupp. And they got the win against Michigan, which that one's, that's in London, and you get it. But the other 4 games, they certainly had their issues. And I think that's fair to ask now, going up against what we think is either the best team or number 2. You can put Tennessee and Alabama in some order right now on the road. How does this Kentucky team respond to that? And can they have that kind of approach that they're going to need to have against Alabama, knowing that Alabama is capable of, blowing out anybody based on how they can play offensively and defensively right now. And so I'm very curious to see how Kentucky approaches this game, because I'll save it for just a minute, because there's one thing I really want to see. If Kentucky comes out and has this one thing, if they do, this is going to be a good game. If they don't, Alabama could win this thing by 15 plus.
All right, I'm going to prompt you for that one thing, but first, a word from our presenting sponsor, Stakes. Predict sports better than the crowd for a chance to win NFTs. With Stakes, players can submit their sports predictions against friends, other fans, and influencers forever. Don't let your sports genius go overlooked. Join Stakes and have the best predictions captured in the moment. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. User invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. All right, let's hear it.
You know what it is. It's does Kentucky let Alabama dictate how they want to play?
Pace.
Or it's, the discussion we have, right? Does Kentucky come out passive, just like Missouri? Missouri, a lot of similarities you can draw between Missouri and Alabama, right? I think there's some similarities in terms of what they can accomplish offensively. Now, I think Missouri does a better job forcing turnovers defensively, and that can be a little bit tougher. Alabama's not forcing a lot of turnovers.
Better job.
Yeah, so but still, it's a good defensive team based on kind of the size and everything Alabama has. But Missouri dictated exactly how that game was going to go. Like, they were in full control. We're not even talking about from a scoreboard standpoint. We're talking about of how the game was going to be played. Missouri completely controlled how that game was going to play out with their approach. Alabama will try to do the same thing to Kentucky. And that's the question to me. What do we say? Killer instinct, passive. Those were words that came up a lot after Kentucky's loss to Missouri. Saw some things improve against LSU, but LSU plays differently than Alabama and Missouri. And so that is what I'm really curious to see with Kentucky is from the start, they're I don't know if there's a team in the SEC that 100% exactly what they're going to like. What Alabama's going to do. Like it's right there for you. Like how they're going to play. They're going to get up and down the floor. Like it's going to be a game that's wide open. A lot of free flowing type of play. What Nate Oates' philosophy is on the shots they're going to take. The blueprint for Alabama. It's just, is Kentucky going to allow that to to for them to play that way? Because if so, Alabama will blow them out of the building based on how Kentucky has played offensively. That's my opinion. Now it could be wrong, right? Like Kentucky's still talented enough to win this game. I'm not saying they're not, but Kentucky to me has to make this game their style of play, which I don't know. What is that, right? I think we're still asking the question of what that is. But I just think that's one of the bigger things here to me is more about the approach. Talent wise, matchup wise, there's a lot of great players on both sides, and two players that are the top two players, in my opinion, for the SEC Player of the Year, and Brandon Miller and Oscar Tshiebwe. But the approach and how John Calipari kind of game plans here, fascinating to me.
Well, and if you're looking for a positive, I mean, there were multiple positives coming out of Kentucky's win, but Jacob Toppin gave Kentucky probably its best game of the season, and I'm interested to see if that carries over. Also, just one housekeeping note here: C.J. Frederick shouldn't play this one either. He's got a dislocated finger, so just for people wanting to know about personnel, there's also that.
What do we say coming the season? We thought Alabama and Kentucky were the two deepest teams in the league.
Uh-huh.
A little interesting.
1 for 2.
Well, yes.
Well,
in
the way that he uses the bench.
I was going to say, now Cal has got it to where he's kind of said, he's made it pretty clear. This is probably what we're going with. Like we're probably going to play about 6 guys that are going to get the bulk of the minutes. And so again, I think that can actually be a good thing because, like we said, it's production, and these guys will give them the best chance to win. We said it. Tshiebwe and Wallace, I think, have to play 40 minutes each. In all honesty, I mean, I think that's how they're going to have to win. But against Alabama, it's the same thing against Missouri, right? It's hard to do that against those kind of teams that play the way they do, and so that presents, I think, more questions for about how Kentucky kind of goes about this from just a game planning and matchup standpoint. So there's a lot to this game. I mean, there really is because, Alabama still turnover prone, right? That they did much better against Ole Miss, but still a team that's prone to turn the ball over at times. But like I said, I think they're getting there with Bradley and Sears and what they can do. Kentucky, we know, can get some easy baskets off the offensive glass. Statistically, Kentucky is still a top 15 team from a 3-point shooting standpoint. Can they make some of those shots? And so I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot here, but like I said, I think the game comes down to which Kentucky team do we see? Do we see the one, that finally has realized the things it needs to do to really be successful and give Cal credit? He's made an adjustment, right? He's decided actively, I'm going to shorten the rotation. I'm going to play this group right here, maybe 5 or 6 guys, but this is what we have to do to win. Now it's, how does that continue to evolve? Offensively, can they find a way to continue to evolve on the offensive end of the floor, get the ball where it needs to go, more movement, more of a flow, a rhythm, something, because they're going to have that to win this game against Alabama. Because to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of questions about Alabama's ability to score here. Because as we said, Kentucky's defense has gotten better, but this still isn't probably what you'd say is just a full-on elite defensive team, right? So,
right.
I mean, there's a lot to this one, but to me, this is way more about Kentucky than Alabama, because which Kentucky team, which mindset shows up, that determines how this game plays out.
Well, before we give you our picks, we'll tell you where to do it. Betting 11 to win 10 stinks with BROTHROW. You can bet $10 to win 10. It lets you bet on all 50 states. It's not the house, so bettors have a fair chance at winning. It is the only sports betting platform that doesn't take a cut of every bet. You don't have to deposit money into an account. No minimum bets. No need to connect your bank account. Bettors pay each other directly. There's a hassle-free sign-up process that lets you get in the action in seconds. Go to brothrow.com/SE14. And once you're there, ask to join our private group, Southeastern 14. Okay, Blake, if the spread is around 10, I will take Alabama to win, Alabama to cover. What do you think?
You're taking Alabama by double digits, huh?
Well, I'd say if the spread is around 7, I will take Alabama to
No.
win and Alabama to cover. I do think Alabama can win this game by 8 to 10 points.
I don't. Everything I said, I don't disagree at all with that because, like I mentioned, it's about Kentucky here. If Kentucky does not, if they are the Kentucky team we saw in some of these games away from Rupp against a UCLA, against a Missouri, games like that, Alabama wins this game by. I
Yeah.
said they can win this game by 15 or more. Like, I mean, that's how good Alabama is. It's not. It would be disappointing for Kentucky, but like that's just how good Alabama can be. So like that wouldn't shock me at all. But if you are looking at some things here that you can kind of maybe get an idea of what this is going to be, go back to last season, different teams, right? But Kentucky comes into Tuscaloosa, holds Alabama to 55 points. Alabama goes 3 of 30 from three last year in that game, if you remember. Um, are they going to go 3 of 30 again? Probably not. But, those are things that you look at, kind of trends. The year before, the game they played in Tuscaloosa was a bit lower scoring. Alabama won that one 70-59. So it looks like, if you're trying to figure out, scoring wise, those kind of things, how could this play out? I think that's how Kentucky can make this interesting, right? Is to keep this kind of a grind it out. I know I use that phrase a lot, but like that, I think that's how for Kentucky, I think that has to be that way in this game. Unless Cal just says, you know what, we're gonna scrap everything. We're just gonna turn this team loose and we're just gonna get up and down the floor and see what happens. But I don't think that will maybe be the case here. But
Hey, here's an interesting stat. Sorry to cut you off, but
no,
I just noticed this. I look at tempo, but I didn't look at how it was broken down.
yeah,
Kentucky holds opponents to 18.6
yep,
seconds per possession. That is 356 of what? 357 to 358. So Kentucky has been effective
yep,
in slowing things down. Now, the variable is if this is in Tuscaloosa.
yeah.
And I think it's probably a little bit easier to play the way you want to play at home. But that does jump off the page here a bit.
Well, and defensively, I think that that's kind of what it comes out. If the game gets away early, that's where I think all of a sudden your style changes because the Missouri game, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about just Missouri just came out quick, kind of after Kentucky got a little bit of an initial burst there. Missouri just kind of took off, and that changed how Kentucky could play. And again, I think that's for Kentucky. I think it's from the start. Like this is a 40-minute game, right? And obviously every game you play is 40 minutes, but in this game, like to me, this is one where like Kentucky cannot afford to get off to a slow start here because that means, Alabama will be able to dictate the tempo of the game. They'll be able to dictate the kind of shots Kentucky takes. And it becomes a different thing. So I think,
Yeah.
look, and you say that about any game, right? But I think specifically in this matchup, Kentucky getting off to a great start in the first half, that first 10 minutes, so crucial because I just, like we said, I don't know that this is a team playing that far from behind. It just kind of changes your game plan a little bit. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Alabama to win. I mean, like I said, I feel pretty good about where the Tide are at. I mean, they're number one in my power rankings this week, and that's kind of been the way over the past several weeks. And so, I'm going to pick them as the home team here. But boy, the more I look at this game, I am really curious to see how this one plays out, and not even who wins. Like it's just how the game plays out, because I think that will tell us so much about Kentucky and their prospects moving forward. Because we've seen 2-game sample size in SEC play, drastic difference in terms of the one game on the road, the one game at home.
Yeah.
And then if you add the other away from home games in this season, the numbers just tell you Kentucky has not been good away from Rupp when it comes to how they play offensively and defensively. They've not looked great. So combine those two together, I think that makes Alabama your pick here. And but man, I don't know if there's been a game to this point this SEC season. It's been small, but I'm so interested in how this game unfolds, just from a stylistic standpoint.
Well, Blake, what? Let me just throw one other stat out there. What was the stat last year? Was it that the top 4 teams in the league lost a combined 1 league game at home?
Yeah, I was gonna
I mean,
say
it was
they
something
great at
crazy
home.
like
Yeah,
that. And
they
and
were.
so
Yeah,
far, you've seen it play to form. I
yeah.
just think it is almost impossible to be an elite team in this league, and it's building, and that's why I mean, look, I had Kentucky as the national championship pick a year ago. I had Kentucky picked to win the league this year, but
Yeah.
I go with what's in front of me, and it's just that Kentucky has not matched expectations, and I think those things are very important in this game.
And look, small sample size, right? Only 2 games in.
Right.
When you look at it from conference play, but if you look at the Ken Palm numbers, the advanced stats from an efficiency standpoint, isn't it interesting? Like Kentucky is the least efficient defensive team in the league, to this point in SEC competition. But like we said,
One
there's a
game.
lot that goes
Yeah.
into that, right? So but they're also one of the most efficient offensive teams. So it's kind of an interesting data there, but this will tell us a lot more. Like I mentioned, this will give us a much better picture of where things are, because you've got the team that plays the fastest tempo in the league versus a team that maybe some Kentucky fans think they should play a much faster tempo, but realistically, they're playing at a much sort of methodical pace. And I just think with the limitations of how they play offense, I think that's how Kentucky has to win this game. It can't be a game where Alabama dictates everything. And like I said, history will tell us that at least in the last 2 games in Tuscaloosa, Kentucky's actually done a pretty good job of keeping it, you know, a game that is more of a methodical type of style versus an 88, 70 type game, something like that. So yeah.
We'll be picking all SEC basketball games for this weekend, and we'll be doing that all regular season and the tournament. Best way to get those, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button also. That helps us out, helps us get noticed. Thank you for watching Southeastern 14 presented by Stakes. We'll see you again soon.